The sound of metal tearing apart filled the air as the Zephyrian battleship ripped through the hull of Kepler Station. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his back against the cold wall and listened to the screaming of the station's alarms. Red lights flashed everywhere, making the dark hallway look like it was covered in blood. Jake held his rifle tight in his hands. His uniform was already torn from running through the broken parts of the station. Black smoke made it hard to see, and the smell of burning metal hurt his nose. He could hear the heavy footsteps of the alien soldiers getting closer. "Captain Morrison, where are you?" came a voice through his radio. It was Lieutenant Amy Carter, the station's science officer. She sounded scared but was trying to stay calm. "I'm in Section 7, Jake whispered into his radio. "The aliens broke through the main door. They're everywhere." "I'm trapped in the lab," Amy said. "They have some kind of energy weapons. Our shields can't stop them." Jake looked around the corner and saw 3 tall alien creatures walking down the hall. They were much bigger than humans, maybe 8 feet tall. Their skin looked like dark green metal, and they had long arms with sharp claws at the end. Their heads were shaped like triangles with yellow eyes that glowed in the dark. These were Zephyrians, the aliens who had been attacking human colonies for months. Nobody knew much about them except that they were very good at fighting and they never left anyone alive. One of the aliens stopped and sniffed the air. It turned its head toward Jake's hiding spot. Jake held his breath and tried not to move. The alien's claws made scratching sounds on the metal walls as it walked closer. Jake waited until the alien was close enough, then jumped out and fired his rifle. The blue energy beam hit the alien in the chest, but it just bounced off like it hit a wall. The alien didn't even slow down. "What?" Jake said out loud. His weapon should have hurt the alien, but it did nothing. The alien made a sound like laughing, but it was scary and deep. It moved faster than Jake thought possible and grabbed him with one big hand. Jake felt his feet leave the ground as the alien lifted him up. "Weak," the alien said in broken human language. "Very weak." Jake tried to kick and punch, but the alien's grip was too strong. The other 2 aliens came over to look at him. They were talking in their own language, making clicking and hissing sounds. "Let me go," Jake shouted, but the aliens just made their laughing sound again. One of them, with more decorations on its armor, seemed to be the leader. It looked at Jake like he was studying a bug. The leader alien touched something on its wrist, and Jake heard Amy's voice coming from a small device. "Captain, help me! They got into the lab!" "Amy!" Jake called out, but then he heard the sound of fighting through the device, followed by silence. "Your friend is captured too," the leader alien said. Its voice was deep and rough. "You humans are so easy to catch." Jake felt angry, but he couldn't do anything. The alien holding him was too strong, and his weapons were useless against their armor. More aliens came down the hall, carrying Amy and 2 other human soldiers from the station. Amy had a cut on her forehead, but she looked okay. The other soldiers, Lieutenant Ben Harris and Sergeant Mike Taylor, were both unconscious. "Take them to the ship," the leader said. "The commander will want to see these creatures." The aliens carried the humans through the broken station toward their ship. Jake could see the damage they had done. The walls were torn apart, and there were holes burned through the metal floors. Everything was destroyed. The Zephyrian ship was huge and dark. It looked like it was made of black stone instead of metal. Strange blue lights ran along its sides, and it made a deep humming sound that Jake could feel in his bones. Inside the ship, everything was bigger than it should be, for humans. The ceilings were high and the doors were wide. The walls had strange symbols carved into them that seemed to glow with their own light. They put Jake in a small room with bars made of energy instead of metal. The blue light of the bars hurt to look at directly. Amy was put in the room next to him, and Ben and Mike were across the hall. "Are you okay?" Jake asked Amy through the bars. "I think so," she said. "My head hurts, but I can think clearly. What about you?" "I'm fine, but our weapons didn't work on them at all." "I noticed that too. Their armor seems to absorb energy. I've never seen anything like it." The door at the end of the hall opened, and the biggest alien Jake had ever seen walked in. This one was almost 9 feet tall, with darker skin and more scars than the others. Gold decorations covered its armor, showing that it was important. "So these are the humans," the big alien said. Its voice was even deeper than the leader from the station. I am Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. You are my prisoners now. Jake stood up and walked to the front of his cell. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Colonial Defense Force. These people are under my protection. Commander Vextar made the laughing sound again. Protection? Look at yourself, creature. You have no claws, no natural armor, no sharp teeth. Your skin is soft like a baby animal. How can something so weak protect anything? The commander walked closer to Jake's cell. I have conquered 50 worlds and destroyed 100 different species. They all had something that made them dangerous. Sharp teeth, poison, thick skin, or powerful muscles. But you humans have nothing. You are the weakest creatures I have ever seen. We're stronger than you think, Jake said quietly. Are you? Vextar reached through the energy bars with one clawed hand. Jake jumped back, but not before the alien's claw cut through his uniform shirt like it was paper. I could kill you with one finger. Jake looked down at the cut in his shirt. The alien's claw had barely touched him, but it had cut right through the tough fabric. Your species will be easy to destroy, Vextar continued. We will take your colonies one by one. Your weak bodies cannot fight against the Zephyrian Empire. The commander turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. I will keep you alive for a while. I want to study your weakness. Maybe I will learn something useful before I kill you. After Vextar left, the hallway became quiet except for the humming of the ship's engines. Jake sat down on the hard floor of his cell and tried to think. The aliens were right about one thing. Humans didn't have claws or thick skin or natural weapons, but Commander Vextar had made a mistake. He thought physical strength was the only kind of strength that mattered. Jake had spent his whole life learning that the strongest muscle in the human body was the brain. Jake, Amy whispered from the next cell. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? That they don't know what they're dealing with? Exactly. They see our bodies and think we're weak, but they don't understand what makes humans dangerous. Jake smiled for the first time since being captured. The Zephyrians had won this battle, but they had no idea what kind of war they had just started. They thought they were fighting against weak animals. They were about to learn that humans were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. 3 days had passed since Jake and his team were captured. The alien ship moved through space toward its next target, and Commander Vextar had made it his daily entertainment to visit the human prisoners. Every morning, the big alien would bring different groups of his soldiers to look at the humans like they were animals in a zoo. Jake had learned to keep his head down and act defeated, but his eyes were always watching and learning. Gather around, warriors, Vextar said to a group of 5 Zephyrian soldiers. Let me show you the weakest species we have ever encountered. The soldiers made clicking sounds with their tongues, which Jake had figured out was their way of showing interest. They crowded around his cell, their yellow eyes studying him like he was a strange bug. Look at this one. Vextar pointed a clawed finger at Jake. See how thin his skin is? I could cut him open with just a light touch. And observe his small teeth, clearly made for eating plants, not for fighting. One of the younger aliens, with fewer scars on his armor, stepped closer. Commander, how did such weak creatures ever leave their home planet? They seem unable to defend themselves. Good question, Lieutenant Krell, Vextar said. They must have been lucky. Perhaps their world had no real predators. Or maybe they used tools to make up for their weak bodies. Jake almost smiled at that comment, but he kept his face blank. If only they knew how dangerous Earth really was, and what humans had to survive just to grow up. But tools can be taken away, Vextar continued. As we have proven, without their machines, they are helpless. From her cell, Amy was also listening carefully. She had been counting the guards, memorizing their schedules, and studying the ship's systems. Jake could see her taking mental notes about everything the alien said. Commander, another soldier asked, what about their intelligence? Some weak species make up for physical weakness with smart thinking. Vextar made his scary laughing sound. Look at them. They sit in their cells doing nothing. No escape attempts, no clever plans. If they were smart, they would have found a way out by now. Jake had to work hard not to laugh at that. The aliens thought sitting quietly meant being stupid. They had no idea that Jake was learning everything about their ship, their language, and their weaknesses just by watching and listening. "Let me show you something interesting," Vextar said. He pressed a button on the wall and the energy bars of Jake's cell disappeared for a moment. "Come out, creature." Jake didn't move. He had learned that the energy field would turn back on in exactly 3 seconds. Not enough time to escape, but enough time to learn more about how it worked. "You see?" Vextar said as the bars came back on. "Even when given a chance, they do nothing. No fighting spirit at all." What the aliens didn't know was that Jake had used those 3 seconds to see the control panel clearly. He now knew which buttons controlled the cells and which ones controlled the ship's other systems. "Their muscles are also pathetic," Vextar continued his lesson. He made the energy bars disappear again, then reached in and grabbed Jake's arm. "Feel how soft this is. No strength at all." Jake let his arm go limp, acting weak and scared. But he was actually testing how strong the alien's grip was and looking for pressure points where the armor had gaps, information that might be useful later. The days continued like this. Every morning brought new groups of alien soldiers to laugh at the human prisoners. Vextar would point out everything he thought made humans weak: their soft skin, small size, lack of claws, and quiet behavior. "This species will be the easiest conquest in Zephyrian history," Vexatar told his officers during one visit. "We will barely need to use our weapons. They will surrender the moment they see our ships." During these sessions, Jake learned important things about the aliens. He discovered that Zephyrians had very good hearing but poor eyesight in dim light. Their armor was strong against energy weapons but had weak points at the joints. They were used to fighting enemies who attacked directly with teeth and claws. Most importantly, Jake learned that the Zephyrians had never fought an enemy who used strategy and planning instead of brute force. Every species they had conquered before fought like wild animals, attacking without thinking and never working together as a team. Amy had made her own discoveries. During the mockery session, she noticed that the ship's computer systems were connected to everything, including the cell controls. She also saw that the aliens never locked their control panels because they thought their prisoners were too stupid to use them. Ben and Mike, the other 2 captured soldiers, were also gathering information. Ben had been a ship engineer before joining the military, and he was studying the alien technology. Mike had been a communications expert, and he was learning the Zephyrian language by listening to their conversations. "These creatures don't even try to communicate with each other," Vextar said during one visit. "Most species at least attempt to make escape plans, but humans just sit there in silence." What he didn't know was that the humans were communicating constantly. They used hand signals, eye movements, and even the way they positioned their bodies to share information. Jake would scratch his nose to tell Amy he had learned something new. Amy would stretch her arms to show she understood. Ben would tap, his foot in patterns to share technical information with Mike. The aliens never noticed because they only looked for the obvious forms of communication they used themselves: loud talking and obvious gestures. "Commander," Lieutenant Krell said during one visit, "when will we reach the next human colony?" 2 more days, Vextar replied. "The planet is called New Haven. Our intelligence says it has weak defenses and a small population. It will fall in less than an hour." Jake's heart jumped when he heard this, but he kept his face calm. New Haven was where his sister lived with her family. He had to find a way to warn them. "After we destroy New Haven," Vextar continued, "we will move on to the larger human colonies. Within a year, their entire species will be extinct." That night, after the aliens had gone to sleep, Jake used quiet hand signals to communicate with his team. Amy had figured out how to override the ship's computer system. Ben knew how to disable the engines. Mike had learned enough of their language to understand their radio communications, but they needed to wait for the right moment. If they tried to escape too early, they would be caught before they could warn anyone. If they waited too long, New Haven would be destroyed. "We have to time this perfectly," Jake thought to himself. The aliens thought humans were weak and stupid because they sat quietly and didn't fight back immediately. But humans had learned something important during millions of years of evolution. Sometimes the best hunters were the ones who waited patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Commander Vextar had made a serious mistake. He had kept the humans alive because he enjoyed mocking them. He thought their weakness was entertaining. But every day he spent laughing at them was another day they spent learning how to destroy his ship and save their people. The Zephyrians were about to discover that the most dangerous human trait wasn't strength or speed or natural weapons. It was the ability to think, plan, and work together as a team. And they were also about to learn that sometimes the quietest enemies were the most deadly ones. The ship's engines made a different sound as they dropped out of hyperspace. Jake felt the change in his bones and knew they had arrived at New Haven. His sister Kate lived on that planet with her husband and 2 young children. The thought of them being in danger made his chest feel tight. Commander Vextar walked into the prison area with a big smile on his face. He looked excited, like a child about to open a present. Behind him came Lieutenant Krell and several other officers, all eager to watch another easy victory. "Wake up, weak creatures," Vextar said loudly. "We have arrived at your next colony. You will have front row seats to watch your species become extinct." Jake lifted his head and looked at the alien commander. For 5 days, he had acted broken and defeated. But now something had changed in his eyes. Amy noticed it too and gave him a small nod. "You know what I find interesting, Commander?" Jake said quietly. Vexitar was surprised. This was the first time the human had spoken directly to him without being asked a question. "What could a primitive creature like you possibly find interesting?" "Yupo." "Keep calling us weak," Jake said, standing up slowly. "But you've been talking to us for days and you still don't understand what you're really fighting." Vextar made his laughing sound, but it seemed less sure than before. "Enlighten me, creature. What am I fighting?" "Humans," Jake said simply. "But you don't know what that word really means." On the ship's main view screen, New Haven appeared as a blue and green planet with white clouds. It looked peaceful and beautiful. Vextar turned to watch as his weapons officer prepared to fire on the planet's defense platforms. "Your colony looks defenseless," Vextar said, "just like all the others we have destroyed." "Fire when ready," Vextar ordered his crew through the communication system. The Zephyrian battleship's main guns charged up with a deep humming sound. Energy built up in the weapon systems, preparing to destroy New Haven's orbital defenses in one massive strike. But something unexpected happened. Before the alien ship could fire, bright flashes of light came from the planet. Dozens of energy beams shot up from the surface and from hidden positions around the planet. The beams hit the Zephyrian ship's shields with incredible force. "What?" Vextar shouted as his ship shook violently. "Those are not the weapons our intelligence reported." The ship's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the incoming fire, but they were already weakening. More energy beams came from different directions. Jake realized that the humans had built hidden defense platforms all around the system. "Shield strength at 70% and dropping fast," came a report from the bridge. "Impossible," Vextar roared. "Our intelligence said this colony had only basic defenses." Jake smiled for the first time since being captured. "Your intelligence was wrong, Commander. We've been preparing for you." "Preparing? You didn't even know we existed until we attacked your first colony." "Wrong again," Jake said. "We've known about the Zephyrian Empire for over a year. We've been watching you destroy other species and learning from their mistakes." Vextar's eyes grew wide. "That's impossible. Our scouts would have detected your ships, would they?" Amy spoke up from her cell. "Tell me, Commander, what do you know about human technology?" The ship shook again as more energy beams hit the shields. This time the lights flickered, and Jake heard the sound of metal bending under stress. "Our technology is superior to all primitive species," Vextar said, but his voice didn't sound as confident as before. "Is it?" Ben Harris called out from his cell. "Then why are your shields failing against weapons you thought were too weak to hurt you?" On the communication system, Jake could hear panicked reports from the bridge. The human weapons were not only more powerful than expected, they were using frequencies and targeting systems that the Zephyrian shields couldn't handle properly. Sir, we're detecting multiple ships approaching from behind the planet, came an urgent report. How many ships? Vextar demanded. 30. No, 50. Sir, there are over 100 human vessels coming toward us. Jake's smile grew bigger. You see, Commander, you made a mistake when you captured us at Kepler Station. What mistake? Vextar's voice was getting higher, and Jake could see fear starting to show in his yellow eyes. You thought Kepler Station was just a research outpost, but it was actually our early warning system. The moment you attacked it, every human colony in this sector knew you were coming. The ship shook so hard that Vextar had to grab the wall to keep from falling. The lights went out for a few seconds before emergency power came on, casting everything in red light. While you were keeping us as prisoners and mocking us for being weak, Amy added, our people were preparing a welcome party for your fleet. Shield, strength at 30%, came another panicked report from the bridge. Vextar looked at the humans with new eyes. For the first time, he began to see them not as weak animals, but as something much more dangerous. You planned this, all of it. Not exactly, Jake said. We hoped we would never need to use these defenses, but we prepared for the worst-case scenario. That's what humans do. We plan for problems before they happen. Sir, Lieutenant Krell called out. The human ships are not attacking randomly. They're using coordinated tactics. They're working together like a single organism. Mike Taylor spoke up from his cell. That's because we are working together. While your species conquers others by being individually strong, humans became the dominant species on our planet by cooperating and sharing information. The ship's main power flickered, and Jake heard the sound of systems failing throughout the vessel. The human attack was not just about firepower, it was about precision and strategy. Commander, came a voice from the bridge. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it on the screen, Vextar ordered. The view screen showed a woman in a blue military uniform sitting in the command chair of a human warship. She had gray hair and calm eyes, but there was something dangerous about her smile. I am Admiral Lisa Stone of the Colonial Defense Force, she said. Commander Vextar, I believe you have some of our people aboard your ship. Vextar stared at the screen. Your species will submit to the Zephyrian Empire as all others have done. Admiral Stone's smile grew wider, and Jake realized it was the same kind of smile a predator made before attacking its prey. Commander, I don't think you understand what you're dealing with. Humans don't submit. We adapt, we learn, and we protect our own. Your defenses are stronger than we expected, Vextar admitted, but we will still destroy your colony. Will you? Admiral Stone asked. Take a look around, Commander, really look. Vextar turned to his tactical display and saw something that made his blood run cold. The human ships hadn't just appeared from behind the planet. They had surrounded his entire fleet without being detected. Every Zephyrian ship was now trapped in a carefully planned formation. How? Vextar whispered. You've been studying our weaknesses for days, Jake said from his cell. But you never bothered to learn about our strengths. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest species in the galaxy, but we are the smartest, and we learn from every mistake. The ship shook again, but this time it was different. Jake realized the humans weren't trying to destroy the Zephyrian ships. They were disabling them with surgical precision. Commander Vextar, Admiral Stone's voice came from the speakers. Your weapons are offline, your engines are failing, and your shields are about to collapse. But we're not going to kill you. We're going to do something much worse from your perspective. What? Vextar asked, though he seemed afraid to hear the answer. We're going to teach you what it means to underestimate humanity. The red emergency lights cast strange shadows in the prison hallway as the Zephyrian ship continued to shake under the human attack. Jake could hear the sound of metal bending and systems failing throughout the vessel. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Now, Jake whispered to Amy using their hand signal code. Amy nodded and moved to the back corner of her cell where she had discovered a maintenance panel during her days of careful observation. The aliens had never bothered to secure it properly, because they thought humans were too stupid to understand their technology. She pressed a sequence of buttons that she had memorized by watching the guards. The ship's computer system was connected to everything just as she had suspected. A soft beep told her she was now accessing the main controls. "What are you doing?" Lieutenant Krell shouted as he ran into the prison area. Behind him came two other Zephyrian guards, their weapons ready. But Jake was already moving. For 5 days he had studied the timing of the energy barriers that kept them trapped. He knew exactly when the power fluctuations from the battle would cause a momentary failure in the system. The energy bars of his cell flickered and disappeared for just 2 seconds. It wasn't much time, but it was enough. Jake slipped through the gap and rolled behind a support beam before the barriers came back online. "Impossible," Krell hissed. "The containment field is still active." Jake had spent years training for situations like this. The Colonial Defense Force had taught him that the human body's greatest advantage wasn't strength or speed. It was the ability to use the environment as a weapon. Everything around him became a tool. The ship lurched violently to one side as another wave of human weapons fire hit the hull. Krell stumbled and fell, his heavy armor making him clumsy. Jake jumped out from behind the beam and grabbed the alien's weapon before he could recover. "Stop!" The other guards shouted, raising their energy rifles. But Jake was no longer where they expected him to be. He had rolled under their line of fire and was now behind them. The narrow hallway that had seemed like a disadvantage for the smaller human was actually perfect for his size and agility. The Zephyrian weapons were designed for their large hands and slow movements. In Jake's smaller, more flexible fingers, the energy rifle became something completely different, a precision tool instead of a crude club. Jake fired 2 quick shots, hitting the control panels that powered the cell barriers. Sparks flew as the systems overloaded and all the energy fields disappeared at once. Amy jumped out of her cell and ran to the main computer panel. Her fingers moved quickly across the alien controls as she accessed the ship's systems. "I'm in," she called. "Out. I can control everything from here." Ben and Mike were out of their cells now, too. Ben grabbed tools from a nearby maintenance kit, items the aliens thought were harmless because they didn't understand how humans could use simple objects as weapons. "The guards are calling for backup," Mike reported. He had learned enough of the Zephyrian language to understand their radio communications. "We have maybe 2 minutes before more soldiers get here." Jake looked at his team. For days, the aliens had mocked them for being weak and helpless. But now, free from their cells, they moved with the coordination and purpose that had made humans the dominant species on Earth. "Amy, can you access the ship's layout?" Jake asked. "Already done," she replied, studying the information on the screen. "The shuttle bay is 3 levels down, but there are 20 guards between us and the ships." "What about the ventilation system?" Ben asked, looking at the ceiling panels. Amy checked the computer. "The air ducts connect to every part of the ship. They're big enough for humans, but too small for Zephyrians." "Perfect," Jake said. "Mike, can you jam their communications?" "Give me 30 seconds, Mike said, working at another control panel. "I can create enough interference to block their radios for about 10 minutes. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway as more alien guards approached. Jake could hear at least 6 of them coming, their claws clicking on the metal floor. "Time to go," Jake said. Ben had already removed a ceiling panel, revealing the ventilation shaft above. The space was tight, but humans were built for crawling through small spaces. It was something their ancestors had done when hiding from predators, millions of years ago. Amy finished downloading the ship's computer files onto a small device. "I've got their star charts, fleet positions, and communication codes," she said. "Our people will want this information." One by one, the humans climbed up into the ventilation system. Jake went last, replacing the ceiling panel just as the Zephyrian guards burst into the hallway. "Where are they?" One guard roared in their clicking language. "The cells are empty," another replied. "How is this possible?" Inside the air duct, Jake smiled as he heard the confusion below. The aliens were looking for escaped prisoners who would run down hallways and fight with weapons. They never thought to look up, because their own large bodies could never fit in such small spaces. The humans crawled through the ventilation system like they were moving through tunnels. Jake led the way using Amy's downloaded map to navigate toward the shuttle bay. Behind them, they could hear the aliens searching frantically through the ship. "They're tearing the place apart looking for us," Mike whispered. "Good," Ben replied. "The more confused they are, the better our chances." As they moved through the ship's air ducts, Jake could hear the battle continuing outside. The human fleet was systematically disabling the Zephyrian ships with incredible precision. Every shot was calculated to cause maximum damage to weapons and engines while keeping the crew alive. "Jake," Amy whispered, "I'm picking up transmissions from our fleet. They know we're on this ship. Admiral Stone is coordinating a rescue operation." "How long before they break through the hull?" Jake asked. 20 minutes, maybe less, Jake thought quickly. 20 minutes was a long time in a battle. Too long to wait for rescue when they could escape on their own. The ventilation shaft opened into a larger maintenance area near the shuttle bay. Jake could see through a small window that there were 8 Zephyrian guards protecting the ships. They looked nervous and kept checking their weapons. "The aliens are scared," Ben observed. "They've never been in a fight where they weren't winning." Jake studied the shuttle bay layout. The Zephyrian ships were designed for their large bodies and slow movements. But there was one small maintenance shuttle that might work for humans, if they could reach it. "Amy, can you create a distraction?" Jake asked. "What kind of distraction?" "Something that will make all the guards look in the same direction for about 30 seconds. Amy smiled and pulled out the device she had used to access the ship's computer. "How about a fire alarm in the engine room? That should get their attention." She pressed several buttons and immediately the ship's emergency systems activated. Loud alarms rang throughout the vessel and the lights began flashing in a different pattern. "Engine room fire," came the panicked voice over the ship's communication system. "All emergency teams report to Section 12. 6 of the 8 guards ran out of the shuttle bay, leaving only 2 behind. Jake and his team dropped down from the maintenance area and moved quickly toward the small shuttle. The remaining guards saw them and raised their weapons, but they made the same mistake all the other Zephyrians had made. They expected the humans to attack directly like wild animals. Instead, Jake and his team used the shuttle bay's own equipment against the guards. Ben activated a loading crane that knocked one guard off his feet. Mike used a fuel hose to spray slippery liquid on the floor, making the second guard fall. Within minutes, the humans were inside the maintenance shuttle. Jake started the engines while Amy worked on overriding the bay doors. The small ship was cramped for the aliens, but it fit the humans perfectly. "Bay doors opening," Amy reported. "We're clear to launch." The shuttle shot out of the Zephyrian battleship and into space. Behind them, Jake could see the alien fleet surrounded by human ships. The battle was almost over, and humanity had won without destroying a single enemy vessel. "This is Captain Jake Morrison," he said into the radio. 4 humans escaping in a stolen shuttle. "Don't shoot us, please." Admiral Stone's voice came back. Immediately. "Jake, good to hear your voice. We've got you on our screens. Welcome back to the human race." As their shuttle flew toward the safety of the human fleet, Jake looked back at the Zephyrian ship. Commander Vextar was probably just now realizing that his weak prisoners had escaped using nothing but intelligence, teamwork, and the aliens' own technology against them. The Zephyrians had learned their first lesson about humanity. Never underestimate the species that had survived by being smart instead of strong. Commander Vextar stood in his damaged command center, staring at the viewscreen in disbelief. His entire fleet was surrounded by human ships, their weapons disabled, their engines offline. But none of his vessels had been destroyed. The humans could have killed them all, but they had chosen not to. "Sir," Lieutenant Krell reported, his voice shaking. "The prisoners have escaped. They somehow accessed our computer systems and stole a maintenance shuttle." Vextar's claws scraped against the metal railing as he gripped it tighter. "How? We watched them for days. They showed no signs of intelligence or planning." "I don't know, sir. They moved through the ship like they knew every corridor and vent shaft. They used our own systems against us." On the main screen, Admiral Stone's face appeared again. Behind her, Vextar could see the bridge of a human warship. It looked different from what he expected. Cleaner, more organized, with crew members working together smoothly instead of shouting orders like Zephyrian officers did. "Commander Vextar," Admiral Stone said calmly, "I think it's time we had a proper conversation." "Your tricks will not save you," Vextar growled, though his voice lacked the confidence it had held days before. "The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 50 worlds. We will not be stopped by one primitive species." Admiral Stone smiled. and Vextar realized it was the same predatory expression Jake Morrison had worn during his escape. Primitive? Commander, let me tell you something about the species you just tried to conquer. The view screen split to show images of Earth, but not the peaceful planet Vextar had expected. Instead, he saw vast cities built on the sides of mountains, underwater colonies in the deepest oceans, and space stations orbiting a star. Humans had not just survived on their world, they had mastered it completely. This is our home, Admiral, Stone continued. Earth. Would you like to know what makes it special? Vextar said nothing, but his yellow eyes were fixed on the images. Earth is what we call a death world, Commander. Everything on our planet has evolved to kill everything else. The weather can freeze you solid or burn you alive. The animals hunt in packs and use tools. Even the plants are poisonous. Most species that visit our world die within hours. New images appeared on the screen. Massive storms that could level, cities, predators with teeth longer than Zephyrian claws, and plants that could dissolve metal with their acid. Vextar felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Fear. Humans are not the strongest species on Earth, Admiral Stone said. We're not the fastest or the toughest, but we became the dominant life form because we learned to do something no other species could do as well. We learned to think, plan, and work together. Impossible, Vextar whispered. No species could survive on such a world. Not only did we survive, Admiral Stone replied, we thrived. We built cities, created art, developed science, and eventually reached the stars. And do you know what we found when we got there? Vextar remained silent. We found that the galaxy was full of species like yours. Physically powerful but limited in their thinking. Species that conquered others through brute force but never learned to truly cooperate or adapt. On his tactical display, Vextar could see that more human ships were arriving. But they weren't attacking. Instead, they were forming a protective formation around both fleets, human and Zephyrian together. What are you doing? Vextar demanded. We're protecting you, Admiral Stone said simply. Your distress signals have been detected by other species in this sector. Some of them have grudges against the Zephyrian Empire. Without our protection, your disabled ships would be easy targets. Vextar stared at the screen in confusion. You're protecting us, but we came here to destroy your colony. Yes, you did, and you failed. But that doesn't mean we want to see you murdered by scavengers. This made no sense to Vextar. In all his years of conquest, defeated enemies had either fought to the death or begged for mercy. None had ever offered to protect their conquerors. Why? He asked. Because that's what humans do, Admiral Stone replied. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if they were our enemies moments before. A communication signal came through from one of the other Zephyrian ships. Commander Vextar, this is Captain Thex aboard the battlecruiser Razor Claw. Our prisoners have also escaped. They're requesting permission to return to the human fleet. Vextar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in amazement. All across his fleet, the human prisoners were escaping in similar ways, using intelligence, teamwork, and the aliens' own technology against them. How many ships in your fleet had human prisoners? Admiral Stone asked. 15, Vextar admitted. And how many escape attempts are you detecting? Vextar checked his tactical display. 15 successful escapes, he said quietly. Every single one, Admiral Stone nodded. Commander, what you witnessed wasn't luck or accident. This is what happens when you underestimate human capabilities. Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system. He was now safely aboard one of the human ships. Commander Vextar, I want to thank you for those daily visits. You taught us everything we needed to know about your ships, your technology, and your weaknesses. You were gathering intelligence, Vextar said, understanding finally dawning in his mind. Every minute of every day, Jake replied. While you were mocking us for being weak, we were learning how to defeat you. That's what humans do. We turn our apparent disadvantages into strengths. Admiral Stone leaned forward in her chair. Commander, I'm going to make you an offer. Your ships are disabled, but they can be repaired. Your crews are alive, though. Their pride is probably damaged. You can choose to continue this war, or you can choose to learn. Learn what? Learn that there are better ways to interact with other species than conquest and destruction. The galaxy is big enough for everyone, but only if we work together instead of trying to dominate each other. Vextar looked around his bridge again. His officers were listening to every word, and he could see them thinking, really thinking, for perhaps the first time in their military careers. The Zephyrian Empire has never retreated from a battle, Vextar said slowly. This isn't a retreat, Admiral Stone replied. This is the beginning of something new. We're offering you a chance to be part of a galactic community instead of trying to rule it. And if we refuse? Admiral Stone's expression became serious. Then you'll discover that everything you've seen today was just a small sample of what humanity is capable of. We've been preparing for threats like your empire for decades. This fleet you're facing right now? It's less than 5% of our total military strength. Vextar felt his blood run cold. If this overwhelming defeat had been inflicted by such a small portion of human forces, what could their full military do? But we don't want to use that strength, Admiral Stone continued, her voice becoming gentle again. We'd rather use our intelligence to solve problems than our weapons to create them. For long minutes, silence filled the communication channel. Vextar thought about everything he had learned in the past week. The humans had outthought him at every step. They had turned his own arrogance against him. They had escaped from his most secure prison using nothing but intelligence and cooperation. Most importantly, they had defeated his entire fleet without killing a single Zephyrian. That showed a level of precision and self-control that his empire had never possessed. What would this galactic community require of the Zephyrian Empire? Vextar asked finally. Stop conquering other species, Admiral Stone said. Start talking to them instead. You'll be amazed what you can accomplish through cooperation instead of domination. Vextar looked at Lieutenant Krell, who nodded slowly. Around the bridge, his other officers were doing the same. For the first time in their lives, they had encountered a species that was truly superior to them, not in physical strength, but in the ways that really mattered. Admiral Stone, Vextar said, his voice carrying a new tone of respect. I think the Zephyrian Empire has much to learn about what it means to be truly strong. On the view screen, Admiral Stone smiled, but this time, it wasn't the smile of a predator. It was the smile of a teacher welcoming a new student. Welcome to the galactic community, Commander. Let's start with Lesson 1. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit when you're wrong. As human ships moved to assist in repairing the Zephyrian fleet, Vextar realized that he had just witnessed the most important moment in his species' history. They had met humans, and learned that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to build something better.